There has been much scrutiny of the role of social media in spreading misinformation. And joining me now to talk about that is Duquesne University law professor Rona Kaufman. And Professor, first of all, what do you make of Facebook and Twitter, until tonight anyway, banning the president? Twitter has allowed him back on. Some say that's censorship and it's unfair. Others say they should have done it much earlier.
My personal opinion is they should have done it much earlier. As far as the extent to which Twitter and Facebook should be regulating the speech on their sites, I actually stand in agreement with Sacha Baron Cohen, who gave a really, really excellent speech a couple of years ago at this point, as to why these social media sites should be taking more responsibility for the hateful messages that are being spread. I don't think that Trump necessarily is at the top of the list of those who need to be who don't need to be given a platform on these social media sites, but I certainly think that he's proven himself to be among them.
You know, we all have our social media feeds. Your feed is unique. It's like your fingerprint. It's not like anybody else's. Algorithms decide what we see, and we end up in what have been called information silos. Do you fear there has been a breakdown of commonly accepted truths?
Absolutely. I mean, I think this has been many years in the making, right? I think that it might have been Stephen Colbert who said that, or who started coining the word truthiness. And that was some years ago, well before Donald Trump. But we certainly have seen that we don't have a common set of facts that we as a country, at the very least, are working from, right? So these people who stormed the Capitol yesterday, to what extent they actually believe there was an unfair election, that Donald Trump really is the president, if they believe that they are saving their country from, an unlawful rule, that's really problematic. It's really problematic. And of course, we've seen that across the board. Our democracy relies on well-functioning institutions. Our education institution needs to be functioning properly, and it's not. Our media needs to be functioning properly, and it's not. And we're seeing, I believe, the consequences of the failures of different institutions that our democracy relies upon.
Give me the solution. How do we get to a situation where I believe something, and even those with whom I have political disagreements at least agree on the facts?
How do we get there? So I really think that the two main institutions we need to rely on is education and media. So to the extent that, we're not teaching civics properly in our schools, that American citizens don't understand the basic workings of our Constitution, don't understand, for example, that freedom of speech is something that we have as a fundamental right, and that the government can't interfere with our speech. But if some private company that makes money off of my, social media post wants to remove me, of course they can. They're a private company. They can do whatever they want. I'm one of their clients or customers or whatever I am. So, I think we need to ensure that our children, that every generation is being raised in this country with some basic proficiency when it comes to how our governmental systems work, what our rights actually are, what the history of our country is. The idea that we do not teach African American history in schools across this nation as a core part of our curriculum is really, it's horrific as far as I'm concerned. So I think one thing that we need to be thinking about is the fact that educated people who really understand history, who understand government, they're not behaving in the ways that we're seeing right now. They are not, other than to the extent that you'll maybe have politicians who will truly take advantage of the masses. But if the masses are not uneducated, there's nothing to take advantage of. So I think that that's one piece of it. I think the media piece is the media can only take advantage of an uneducated populace. So when you have people who are, fundamentally lacking of basic knowledge, again, about history and about government, then it's really easy for media outlets to take advantage of them. And we at this point have polarized media. There's like Democratic media and Republican media, which makes no sense, because Democrat and Republican are not two opposing ideologies. There are, views that if you're anti-big government, there are plenty of issues that you would be a Republican on and plenty of issues that you would be a Democrat on if you were being intellectually honest with yourself.
Yeah.
So
no,
sorry.
I hear you, and I think your points are well taken. a variety of opinion media is great, but unless we have a commonly accepted set of facts, I agree with you, and that starts with education. So to you and your fellow educators, good luck. We're all counting on you. Professor Rona Kaufman from Duquesne University, thanks so much.